A very good evening to all of you. Today we are going to discuss a pie chart. It's not a pie chart, it's three pie charts here we have. And in these three pie charts, we are going to see the average percentages in typical meals of three types of nutrients, all of which may be unhealthy if eaten too much. So we have the nutrients listed here as sodium, saturated fat, and added sugar. These are the nutrients which we can see. And if we go ahead and see what about the meals, you can see breakfast, dinner, lunch, and snacks. So whatever the nutrient is, the sodium intake is the highest during the dinner. Saturated fat is also the highest during the dinner. These two are unhealthy if eaten too much. So dinner is unsafe. In case of an American, when he consumes 43% of sodium at his dinner, 37% of saturated fat at his dinner. When it comes to the snacks time, added sugar, 42% of added sugar is there. It's absorbed during his snacks time. So let's go ahead and see what exactly these percentages are. Average percentage of sodium, saturated fats, and added sugars. So if an American consumes 1,000 calories of an energy, or if it is, just go ahead with 100. If it is 100%, if I calculate from 100% of sodium intake, 43% of the sodium intake happens during the dinner. Only 14% he takes during his breakfast. Only 16% of the saturated fat he takes during the breakfast. Only 16% of added sugar he takes during the breakfast. So which is the safest side of an American is the breakfast, and which is not the safe. That's, you can see from all these three pie chart, you can see this the dinner. Even though we have added sugar more percentage in snacks, we have 23, nearly a quarter percentage of average added sugar is there during the dinner. So let's go ahead and see what exactly the picture is from a model here. Let's go ahead with the model. I'll just make it bigger, bolder, and I'll highlight it. An account of the estimated amount of sodium, saturated fat, and added sugars, which is included in typical meals in the USA, is depicted in the given pie charts. So if I go ahead and see the question, average percentage of sodium, saturated fats, and added sugar in typical meals consumed in the USA. So an average person, an average American person consumes this amount of sodium, this amount of saturated fat, this amount of added sugars. And how the proportion is divided by the meals. I mean the breakfast, dinner, lunch, and snacks. So it's restated here, an account of the estimated amount of sodium, saturated fat, and added sugars, which is included in typical meals. Typical meals means breakfast, dinner, lunch, and snacks in the USA is depicted in the given pie charts. So the introduction is clear. Now let's go ahead with the overview. This is the overview. Let's go ahead and highlight it. Overall, it is obvious that all the three nutrients are seen consumed comparatively lesser amounts at breakfast. So if you see the overview, you can see only one picture there. All the three nutrients are consumed in comparatively lesser amounts in breakfast. And what about the higher amount? So you can see the lesser amount means the safer amount. So what about the higher amount? So it's missing. So we need to add that. Overall, it is obvious that all three nutrients are seen consumed in comparatively lesser amount at breakfast. So I can say, in general, breakfast seems to be the safest meal and dinner the most unsafe for an average American. So I have just made an editing there. I said in general, breakfast seems to be the safest meal and dinner the most unsafe for an average American. Even though we have snacks, when you consider snacks, the added sugar is consumed most during the snacks. We have around 23% of added sugar consumed during the dinner. So in general, we can say it is the unsafe. Now let's go ahead with the detail. I'll make it. Okay, fine. In case of the intake of sodium and saturated fat, most consumption is recorded at dinner. So you can say something similar there in case of sodium and saturated fat. You can say the most consumption of these nutrients is recorded at dinner. Out of the total sodium intake of an average American, so what is this 43% is the total sodium intake a day. Out of the total sodium intake of an average American, 43% is during dinner. Roughly around 37% of saturated fat is ingested during this time from its aggregate proportion of consumption. So I can now compare sodium 43 and saturated fat 37, because if you see that this data is different and this data is different, so sodium intake, maybe if I'm taking around 250 grams of sodium, and if I am taking saturated fat around 350 gram of saturated fat, I cannot compare. So I'm not taking a fixed amount of sodium, fixed gram of sodium. I'm not taking fixed gram of fat. So I can now compare this 47% to 37%. This is a separate data. This is a separate data. So most of the pie charts you can compare between the pie charts. I cannot compare because these pie charts are different. Because if I see an average American consumes around 200 grams sodium a day, but he may consider more fat during that day. So the total may different. It may be different. So it's not possible to compare this 43% to 37%. I cannot compare this 21% to 14% because the sodium intake, the measurement is different. Saturated fat, the measurement is different. So I cannot do that. So this is something which has to be separated. However, most added sugar is taken with snacks, and this accounts for just 2/5 of its total consumption. You can say that 2/5, just over 2/5. At the same time, approximately 23% of sugar is taken with dinner. The same time, you can have to see the same time 23% of the sugar is taken during the dinner. That has to be seen along with this particular data. So we have nothing to edit there. It's perfect. Let's go ahead with the next. This is the next paragraph. Here, the thing is, the proportion of, yes, the proportion of sodium, fat, and sugar intake at lunch are 29, 26, and 19 respectively. So 29, 26, and 19 respectively. I have said it because in one sentence, because we have to present it separate. I don't have to, because it's an average thing. It's not extremes. It's not in the higher side. It's not in the highest side. It's not in the lowest side. So it stands in the middle. So I just presented it 29, 26, and 19 respectively. So if I say complete, just over 1/5 of the total fat consumption is seen with the snacks. Just over 1/5 of the total fat consumption. Fat consumption over 1/5. Yes, this is the thing here. Fat consumption is with the snacks. Okay. Which is also a notable figure. Yeah, this is also a notable figure. However, the average consumption of all these three nutrients falls between 14 and 16 during the breakfast, which is not seen as unhealthy. So there's 14 and 16 breakfast. So we can say we have to make a small editing there. However, the average consumption of all these three nutrients, all these three nutrients, I can go, all three nutrients falls between 14 and 16 during breakfast, which can be considered as the best and this can be considered as the best meal of an American. So that's it. So I have made an editing there. So I just said, however, the average consumption of all these three nutrients fall between 14 and 16 during breakfast. That's the lowest level. When it exceeds, it's unhealthy. So it's the lowest in the breakfast side. So I have said that. Then I said this can be considered as the best meal for an American, for an average American. And that's the end of the explanation here. Thank you.